Be me, Jake, 28, quiet office dev at a mid-tier software company. We sell boring tools to boring businesses, and nobody pretends otherwise. I've been here 3 years, and I learned to avoid office theater. Show up, ship work, dodge drama, go home, repeat until retirement. Our old manager, Greg, ran meetings fast and treated adults like adults. Greg cared about deadlines, clean output, and not embarrassing us to clients. We talked plainly, argued quickly, fixed problems, then got back to work. Then Greg left for a better gig, and leadership rebalanced culture. They hired Brittany, 29, from People and Culture, which sounded harmless. She arrived with pastel everything, a sticker bottle, and eager posture. Her friendly face stayed on, but her eyes scanned for compliance. She introduced herself loudly, like she was opening a show. Most people nodded politely and returned to keyboards without fanfare. Brittany held the moment too long, waiting for enthusiasm to happen. That tiny twitch in her cheek said she hated being ignored. By lunch, she scheduled a mandatory welcome meeting for the next morning. Greg's welcomes were 10 minutes. Brittany's came with emojis and exclamation marks. Next morning, we sat in the conference room at exactly 9. A fruit platter waited on the table, staged like a corporate photo. 6 guys, 2 women, plus Mark, our team lead, already exhausted. Mark was 36, married, 2 kids, and permanently tired behind the eyes. Brittany wrote ground rules in purple marker with careful handwriting. Assume positive intent. Speak from the I. No interrupting. No fixing. She added, no debating lived experience, as if this was court. Nobody laughed because she wasn't joking. Then she made us introduce ourselves with roles and one value. Kyle, 27, my buddy, said he brought caffeine and stubbornness. Brittany laughed too loudly, a laugh that landed like a warning. Nate, 26, quiet detail guy, said he brought precision and receipts. Everyone looked at him, and Nate blinked like it was normal. Emily, 28, calm and sharp, said she brought clarity and structure. Brittany made a small approving note beside Emily's name. Sarah, 25, newer and nervous, said she brought positivity and patience. Brittany nodded like she'd already decided Sarah needed support. My turn came, and I said I brought solutions under pressure. Brittany tilted her head, held eye contact a beat too long. She said solutions can silence others when offered too quickly. It was 9:12 and the minefield was already laid. She talked for an hour about safety, inclusion, and harmful tone. We discussed 0 projects, 0 deadlines, and 0 real problems. When she dismissed us, Mark looked relieved and slightly older. Kyle messaged me instantly, asking if tone was now a safety issue. I replied Greg died for this, and Kyle replied with a skull. During week 1, Brittany floated around the floor, watching conversations. She asked people how they felt about collaboration every single morning. She asked what they needed to feel supported, as if we were seedlings. It felt less like work and more like a slow audition. 2 days later, her first company-wide email hit everyone's inbox. Subject line screamed, important, respectful communication policy, action required. I opened it, and dread arrived before the words. She wrote that some voices weren't being heard in meetings. She wrote that direct language might be perceived as aggressive. She listed banned phrases including, that's wrong and obviously. She wrote that feedback should begin by asking permission. Then she introduced a respect report form with a neat little link. She ended with mandatory training Friday, and attendance will be recorded. I looked around and saw airplane turbulence faces everywhere. Mark passed my desk and whispered, "Please, just play along." Kyle rolled over and asked what a respect report even was. Nate said it was probably anonymous, and his tone stayed flat. Emily leaned in and asked if Brittany would read them herself. Nate shrugged and said, "Assume she reads everything." Later, Nate told me why he cared about receipts. He'd watched a coworker get crushed by a vague HR complaint before. Different company, same pattern, no proof, just feedback and a firing. Nate decided that day he would never lose without a paper trail. Friday arrived and Brittany ran training like she'd rehearsed it. She stood with a clicker, paused like she expected applause. Slide 1 showed happy, diverse people laughing in a perfect office. Slide 2 read harmful communication patterns in friendly giant letters. She listed correcting, fixing too fast, certainty, and taking up space. Then she delivered the golden rule slowly, enjoying the silence. Before you speak, ask if this needs saying by you. Also ask if it needs saying right now with your voice. She showed a slide that said, "Impact over intent," like gospel. Kyle mouthed, "Kill me," and I almost choked on water. Then she forced role play, because control always wants a stage. Nobody volunteered, so she picked Kyle with a bright smile. Kyle read her script flatly, as if reading terms and conditions. Brittany reacted dramatically, like he'd slammed a door. At the end, she passed an acknowledgement sheet and watched us sign. Everyone signed because rent is real and pride is optional. Walking back, Kyle whispered that anonymous form meant invisible snitches. Nate said he saved the email already, then saved the slide deck too. Week 1 turned normal conversation into careful, awkward performance. Direct answers became unsafe, and confidence started sounding illegal. We began speaking like customer support bots, and it drained everyone. Brittany patrolled the office, listening for tone violations. When she heard certainty, she appeared and demanded a softer rewrite. Mark tried running a normal Monday meeting to keep sanity alive. I said I was fixing a bug causing login errors. Brittany raised her hand, like we were children again. She asked us to avoid bug, because bug implies fault. Mark rephrased it as an issue, and Brittany nodded approvingly. Afterward, Kyle whispered she was banning reality one noun at a time. That same afternoon, the first report landed on someone else. Not me, not Kyle, but Stan from another team. Stan was older, blunt, and allergic to corporate theater. He got pulled into a room with Brittany and Mark. He came out pale, holding a notepad like it was evidence. Stan whispered someone reported him for dismissive energy. He said Brittany called it a pattern and demanded reflection. Stan stopped speaking in meetings after that, full stop. Watching that happen made the fear feel real. Brittany didn't need to punish everyone, just one example. Week 2. Brittany escalated by adding, "Respect champions." Each team would appoint champions to model healthy speech. Repeat violations would be escalated, which meant nobody slept easy. Then she announced peer support partners, and my stomach sank. She framed it as allyship, shared responsibility, and professional growth. Then she explained the requirement in writing very clearly. Senior members pair with juniors. Meet weekly for 2 hours minimum. To avoid productivity impact, meet at lunch, evenings, or convenient times. Partners document goals and submit monthly reflections for visibility. Kyle whispered 2 hours, the way people whisper about debts. Mark hurried over and begged us not to panic. He said Brittany had executive buy-in and fighting would be messy. Kyle asked how to phrase unpaid weekends in safe language. Mark hissed stop because Mark was already drowning. Nate messaged me privately, asking if she just wrote unpaid labor. I replied yes, and Nate replied good, because good meant evidence. Before the kickoff, Brittany made another helpful change. She rewrote a client email draft Trevor had prepared. Trevor had written a simple update with clear timelines. Brittany softened it, removed dates, and added gratitude and feelings. The client replied confused, asking if we were delaying delivery. Trevor stared at his screen and looked physically ill. That was the warning flare before the bigger fire. Brittany scheduled a kickoff meeting the next day. We shuffled into the conference room like people awaiting a verdict. She talked about stepping up and doing the work. Then she pulled out commitment forms because paper makes it feel final. She said it was just a pledge so they could track participation. The clipboard moved down the rows in slow, quiet obedience. Kyle signed without looking up, then slid it toward me. Brittany's eyes locked onto my hands, waiting for surrender. I picked up the pen and held it above the line. I didn't sign, and I didn't lecture. I wrote one sentence in the margin, calm and neat. Please confirm this time is paid work time or voluntary. I slid the clipboard to Nate, and the air tightened. Brittany asked why my signature was missing. Voice, sweet and sharp. I said I'll participate during work hours, happily. I said I won't commit to mandatory unpaid work in personal time. Brittany asked if I refused to support colleagues laying the trap. I repeated my question, calm and clear. Is it paid work time, or is it voluntary? Brittany said we'd follow up, then moved on quickly. The meeting ended, but the room felt newly awake. By the vending machine, Kyle whispered I was insane. Nate walked up and said he recorded the exchange for notes. Emily came over quietly and said thank you, eyes tense. Mark hissed why I did that, like I'd kicked a hornet nest. I said because it was wrong, and Mark said wrong doesn't matter here. That night, Brittany emailed me with a polite subject line. Regarding your participation, and I knew it would sting. She wrote the program was an expectation for senior employees. She wrote it was not optional, and allyship requires discomfort. Then she wrote the line that made my skin prickle. Your resistance will be documented as a pattern if it continues. She put the threat in writing, clean and undeniable. I forwarded it to Nate with one word, save. Nate replied already, because Nate never slept on receipts. Week 3. Brittany treated me like a problem to manage publicly. In meetings, she asked me to share feelings about growth. She asked me to reflect on defensiveness, smiling like a coach. It felt like punishment wrapped in polite language. Kyle copied my approach and became painfully formal in meetings. Nate asked clarifying questions in public threads, forcing text answers. Brittany replied with vague phrases about culture and shared responsibility. Nate replied, thanks. Please confirm yes or no every time. Week 3 also brought another report, this time closer. Kyle got pulled into a check-in with Brittany and Mark. Kyle came back quiet, and his hand shook slightly. He said someone reported his tone during a Slack message. He said the message just said, "This won't work," Here's why. Brittany told him to rewrite it with curiosity. Kyle started writing messages like legal disclaimers after that. He hated it, but fear makes people obedient. Week 4 brought real pressure because sales had a major client visit. Trevor from sales was 31 and lived on energy drinks. He kept saying this deal funds half the quarter. The client wanted an in-person demo and direct answers. Brittany saw a stage and inserted herself into the agenda. She said she'd open with culture values to set tone. Trevor smiled through pain because Trevor likes paying bills. The morning of the visit, the office felt unnaturally quiet. People dressed slightly nicer, as if fabric could change outcomes. The clients arrived at 10, 3 suits, polite smiles, impatient eyes. Trevor started the demo, and it actually went fine at first. Then Brittany stood, clasped hands, and began the culture sermon. She spoke about safe collaboration and making space for voices. I watched the clients' faces, polite smiles with dying patience. Then questions started, simple questions needing simple, direct answers. The client asked if a feature could do X by Y. Kyle started answering normally because instinct beats training sometimes. Brittany cut him off mid-answer, right in front of clients. She said, "Let's make room for other voices," bright and firm. Kyle froze, said sure, and stopped talking. Trevor jumped in with sales words that answered nothing. The client asked again, more direct, and the room tightened. Emily answered clearly because Brittany never interrupted Emily. Then the client asked about limitations, real edge case truth territory. I opened my mouth, and Brittany's eyes snapped toward me. She reminded us to avoid absolute language like it was policy. I said it depends on requirements, and the client frowned. The client asked yes or no, and I repeated it depends. The client asked depends on what, and my face got hot. I said I'd prefer requirements in writing to avoid miscommunication. Brittany nodded approvingly, like I'd passed her test. The client looked at Trevor with a confused, annoyed expression. Then the client asked about timelines, and Mark tried answering. Brittany interrupted Mark and warned against pressuring commitments. Mark went quiet because Mark was one report from collapse. The client said they need commitments for rollout planning. Brittany said they honor sustainable pace, and the client stared. Then the client asked, "Who is responsible if rollout goes wrong?" Brittany said, "Shared responsibility," and the client asked who to call. Brittany said the team, and the client asked which person. Brittany said we avoid centering individuals, and Trevor looked dead. The client said he needs clear answers, not philosophy. So I complied loudly, exactly how Brittany built this trap. I said I'd love to answer, but I shouldn't take up space. I asked Brittany to specify language for accountability to stay compliant. Brittany forced a smile and said, "Not now." The client asked for someone who answers directly. Trevor said Jake can, voice cracking slightly. I said I can answer direct questions if permitted. Brittany said, of course, and her face stayed perfectly neutral. I answered clearly, naming myself and Kyle as contacts for issues. The client nodded like he finally got water. Then Brittany did the dumbest possible thing in front of outsiders. She said Jake. That felt a little forceful. One of the suits actually stopped taking notes. Trevor made a sound like he swallowed a coin. Brittany corrected my tone in front of the client. The client blinked, then said, Forceful is good. He said he likes forceful, and he hates guessy language. You could hear a pin drop in that room. The meeting limped to the end, polite but dead. The clients left early, and Trevor whispered, "We're screwed." An hour later, we got an invite for an emergency debrief. Attendees were us, Brittany, Trevor, and Mr. Carter, the director. Carter was older, quiet, and spoke like words cost money. He asked Trevor why they left early, flat and sharp. Trevor said they felt we weren't being direct. Carter looked at Brittany, and Brittany started with calm confidence. She said safe culture can feel different to outsiders. Carter said outsiders are paying us, and his eyes narrowed. He asked why my answers sounded weird, pointing at me. Mark said we followed Brittany's policy, trying to protect the team. Carter asked what policy, and Brittany hesitated, half a beat. She said, respectful communication policy, aligned with company values. Carter said he didn't approve anything that makes us look incompetent. He said, show me, and Nate calmly pulled a folder. Nate slid it across the table, neat, prepared, and silent. Carter flipped through printed emails, slides, and acknowledgments. He stopped on the partner email and tapped the paragraph. He told Brittany to confirm out loud what it required. Brittany started with, "It's flexible, already trying to wriggle free." Carter asked, yes or no, are evenings and weekends required? Brittany said encouraged, then said flexible again, then said intent. Carter slid my email thread across and pointed at a sentence. He told her to read that line, then answer yes or no. Brittany swallowed and read, "Not optional," in a smaller voice. Carter asked again, "So are evenings required, yes or no?" Brittany's face flushed, and she tried to pivot to intentions. Carter cut it off and said we're discussing labor and liability. He said required labor outside hours creates a wage and hour nightmare. He said that nightmare becomes a legal problem, fast and expensive. Brittany said that's not fair, voice shaking. Carter said, what's not fair is risking the company for theater. He asked Trevor if Brittany corrected tone in front of the client. Trevor said yes, quietly, like admitting a crime. Carter asked one more thing, eyes steady on Brittany. He asked if she created an anonymous reporting form she monitored. Brittany tried calling it accountability, and Carter demanded a yes. Brittany said yes, and the word sounded like a door closing. Carter nodded once like confirming a diagnosis. He said the partner program is paused effective immediately. He said the reporting form is disabled effective immediately. He said no policy changes without HR leadership and legal approval. Brittany tried saying he can't just do that. Carter said he can because he answers for the revenue. Emily spoke quietly and said she doesn't need a form. Emily said she needs adults who can talk plainly. Carter stood and told Brittany to come to his office now. Brittany grabbed her bottle-like armor and walked out fast. When the door shut, the room didn't cheer. The room simply exhaled, like lungs remembered how. That night, Carter sent a dry email to everyone. Policies introduced without legal review are canceled immediately. The Respect Report form is permanently removed. The Peer Support Partners Initiative is permanently discontinued. The responsible employee is removed from initiatives pending performance review. That last line didn't say fired. It said, no more power. Next morning, Brittany's desk remained, but her personal stuff was gone. No pastel sleeve, no stickers, no notes, just emptiness. HR leadership met us one by one, calm checklist style. They asked about unpaid mandatory work and threats in writing. They asked about tone correction in front of clients. We answered plainly because the emails already told the truth. That afternoon, Brittany walked through once, fast, eyes down. She held a cardboard folder, trying to look smaller than she was. She didn't speak to anyone, and she didn't scan for tone. It was the quietest she'd ever been. And that silence felt like justice, because control was her food. 2 days later, one of her old workflows fired again. A Slack notification popped up during a normal workday. "Congrats, Jake. You've been nominated as a respect champion." It appeared like a sad echo from a dead system. Kyle saw it and laughed so hard he turned away. Emily covered her mouth, trying not to smile. Mark stared at it like it was cursed. Nate leaned in and said screenshot, because evidence matters. I screenshotted it, and it felt like the last echo dying. By the end of the week, even that echo stopped. No badges, no forms, no forced feelings, no scripted softness. Trevor later said the client still signed, after Carter called personally. He promised simplified internal processes, and the client relaxed. Mark said never again, and everyone nodded like a prayer. Emily spoke normally again without watching for permission. Nate kept saving emails anyway because fear makes habits. Sometimes new hires ask what happened to the last culture manager. We shrug and say she pursued other opportunities because office language. But when policy emails arrive now, my eye still twitches. I remember Brittany's clipboard and the room's careful silence. Then I remember the margin note I wrote, calm and simple. Please confirm in writing. Turns out you don't beat control with yelling. You beat it by making it commit on paper